Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Hey, Tom. Happy Wednesday.
Good morning, Bob. How are you today?
I'm a little perky.
I see that. Why is that?
Out. Watch out. Crazy things happen when I'm perky, you know.
Oh, boy. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Antidote. As you know, that's Bob. I'm Tom. And this is where we are going to have a conversation around a topic and help real renegades take action. We'll talk about our discussion. We'll discuss our topic. And then at the end, we will offer our one thing. If you have some thoughts on the topic, please feel free to share them in the comments. And if you like this, because it is also on podcast, please feel free to let us know or share it with someone else, because we're trying to distribute the podcast broader and wider than just our Facebook group, because the Facebook Live is in Facebook group. So our topic this week is around follow-up methods. And today we have the fun topic of one-to-many. And before we get to that, normally we do a celebration. Bob, do we have a day to celebrate today?
We do. We're going old school today.
Uh-oh.
It's National Mail Order Catalog Day.
That still exists. Huh?
You know, what's funny is I can remember a time. I was born in 1965. I can remember a time in the early 70s when catalogs would come about this time of year. There'd be a toy catalog, and you would look through a toy catalog and you dog-ear the pages that you wanted to buy the gift, your parents to buy you the gift from. And sometimes you did mail order stuff. It was pretty rare back then. It wasn't like the Amazon world of today where you just give them your credit card, say you want it, and it shows up that day, the next day, or 2 days later. Mail order was kind of, in the really old days, you went to like the Sears store with your catalog, gave them the check or cash, and then they did whatever magic they did, and they didn't even deliver it to your house. They delivered it to that Sears location, and you had to go pick it up there. And that was a pretty exciting way to get stuff. And if you were in a non-urban area, sometimes that was your lifeline. I mean, out where you grew up, it was probably the only way you could get stuff, right? Because you were in the ice age and there wasn't anything for miles, and you had to walk 10 miles uphill both ways to school and back, right?
Incorrect. Close.
Okay.
Not quite correct. It's interesting, though, because if you really just look at mail order, now, I think back then you would get the magazine, you would put a check in the mail, literally, send it off to the store. And I do believe the store actually delivered sometimes. Especially out where I live, because in the middle of nowhere, you couldn't even get to the store they didn't exist. They weren't in my area, as you've shared. And today, in reality, what is Amazon?
It's really a mail order catalog business where it's not mail order, it's internet order catalog.
It comes by mail.
Yep.
Someone has to deliver it. So that's an interesting, and I think that's an interesting that's today. And our conversation is around follow-up methods of one-to-many. So back then, that was one way to follow up. People who expressed an interest or not, and you just, in the store, just broadly sent out to everybody in an area their magazine. That was their follow-up. That was their way to reach out and communicate. And in some ways, it was effective. And again, I think you would say that Amazon has become very effective of offering the opportunity, Amazon to many, to make purchases. And then the purchases show up in the mail. And so I think that it's just one of the unique ways that one-to-many can work and has worked in the past. And I think that that's interesting, because I think a lot of people believe, and I think some of the conversations we've had, is that one-to-one is the most effective. And while I believe that to be true, I also believe it's true that one-to-many can also be effective. What are some of your thoughts around this, Bob?
Well, I love how you connected the celebration today to the topic. That was just like artful. And people, Tom has no idea what the topic is until I bring it up. So it's not like you had 20 minutes to map that out. But I think when we talk about one to many, it's a different world of one to many than it was in catalog days. In the catalog day that we're talking about 50 years ago, one catalog got sent. The same catalog went to everyone. Now, I am a Eddie Bauer client. I buy Eddie Bauer shirts. They have shirts like this polo shirt that fits really well. And
Yes.
Eddie Bauer has a big and tall section. I get a catalog 4 times a year from Eddie Bauer that's big and tall stuff. My wife gets a catalog that's focused on things that she buys from them. Other people I know get catalogs with home goods from Eddie Bauer's. I don't see the home goods catalog from Eddie Bauer. I know it exists because I've seen it at friends' houses, but they don't send that to me. So that one to many over the years has become one to many, but the many is much more narrow now. So if you can identify a need and say, oh, all these people came to my rug cleaning service with Oriental rugs, group them up, and that one to many, if you focus on something for Oriental rug owners, that's going to probably be more effective than just rugs in general. And I think that's a shift. I didn't really think about it until you were talking about the mail orders catalog thing, but Amazon is very focused, right? If I go to Amazon and look at what's on my feed today, they know what I like to buy. They are well aware of what I buy. And oh, by the way, here's the thing that'll take you just a tad further, right? So they are one to many, but they're also, because of the technology we have in play now, we can be much more focused. We can deliver a much more clear message if we can figure out people's interests. So part of that follow-up really has to be finding out what people are genuinely interested in.
Certainly. Or you take a different approach. I think one of the other ways, some people would say, all right, well, I have a business or provide a service that the people who read the sports section would be interested in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you'd say, all right, if I'm a sporting goods store, I'm going to have an ad in the newspaper, the local newspaper, in the sports section, because that's where my people are going to hang out. So even though the idea of market research 50 years ago was not as scientific,
refined, yeah,
it was still, people were still making educated guesses around where are my clients and what are their needs and interests, and how do I put those in front of them? You think about the Sears catalog, that thing was inches thick when it came out. I mean, I can't imagine the cost to produce, ship as many of those as were sent out. And they pretty much offered every section you could ever imagine. Sears was one of those stores that offered everything. And so their thought was, if we offer everything and we share that with everyone, some of those people will purchase. You have to have a pretty big advertising marketing budget to be able to do that. And yet the concept is still the same. They try to identify what people might be interested in, and how do we put it in front of them. And I think that's the same that holds true today, is just there's different ways to do it that you can make it more effective. And I would almost argue that there are still people who say, I'm going to put my billboard up on a busy road. I believe that there are people who are interested in my goods or services that drive up and down that road. Not a lot of market research on that, except you might say, okay, who are the people commuting to that way? Or on a radio station. I'm going to buy an ad on a radio station that's going to run during the morning or afternoon drive time, because I believe that my clients, potential clients, are there. Don't have a ton of research that says This is exactly what they're interested in. This is exactly where I'm going to put it, like Amazon does. And yet there is still some thought process that goes into identifying who the client is and what they might be interested in.
Tom, I'm liking this billboard idea. I see us in our new polos. A nice ad that says, I don't even know what it would say. Maybe that's what we should ask people. If you're watching this and you have an idea for what our billboard should say, please share it. That would be something. And you're right. On a busy highway, we probably would attract some people.
There would be some interest because it's so big and so large that and people are like, hard to say, sort of paying attention to the road. Well, although they also know that you could be stuck in traffic. And driving around the Beltway in Baltimore or many other cities, if you're driving from Long Island commuting into New York City, you're not always moving at 70 miles an hour. Sometimes you're not moving. And so you have a chance to read those billboards.
I'm starting to like this a lot, Tom.
Really? You think that's a good idea for us?
I do. I think we've missed our mark. That's what we need is a billboard. That's what was standing in our way.
I thought the podcast so that people could listen. Then they don't have to see our faces. And that might be the opportunity that they'd be like, wow, that's really fascinating. They're not distracted by the image. They're just listening to the conversation.
By the way, speaking of distracted by the image, your shirt is doing some weird wavy stuff today.
Because it's small stripes. Sorry.
Yeah. So have to get a polo or something. Oh, wait, we got those.
Correct. Chose not to wear it today.
That's it. So, Tom, we're getting to that point. For those of you who are new at this is one of the things that's really important. This is the real goal of our program, is to actually come up with one thing. Each of us shares our one thing to help you put this whole idea into a new context. It might be something you deal with today. It might pop into your head 3 weeks from now. It might be something you tell someone else when they're in the similar situation. So, Tom, with that preface, what is your dun-dun-dun-dun one thing for today?
Wow, you are perky with that little introduction. You know, I think it's interesting. I hadn't really thought about this until you brought it up. But really, businesses have been doing one-to-many marketing or follow-up forever. It's just different methods, and they've had the ability to gather different information. You know, back at even though I didn't really live through these, I hear the stories about my dad all the time. The penny candy was always at the front. And that carries through today, is that if you go into a grocery store, there's candy right by the register, because it's one of those last minute things that I might grab before I leave to take with me, because they had some understanding that otherwise it would get lost in the shuffle. But that if you catch somebody
a good impulse buy.
Correct. And so I think that as you think about how you're doing your marketing or how you're doing your messaging to your staff, you know, because I think sometimes that gets lost in this, is that those are follow-up methods, is messaging to the staff. And I can clearly remember we would have a big event that went well. And while, yes, I would go to certain people and I do follow-up and thank you, there were others that I just did broad follow-up. I sent a nice message to people on campus, or you did a thank you note that was sort of generic to everybody who attended, and maybe doing a survey to get some feedback on it. And so there are plenty of ways to do one-to-many follow-up that can be effective. I think the clear thing is knowing what you're trying to accomplish and what are you going to do with the information that you gain once you do that follow-up.
I like all that. I think that's really key. You have to know what your goal is before you start it. So if you and I were to actually do the billboard, we need to have a realistic expectation. Yes, 80,000 people might see it a day, but what percentage of that 80,000 do we really think is interested in what we do? It might be 0.5% of 1%. So if 30 people react to that billboard, that might be great success. Whereas people are like, wow, 80,000 people saw it a day. Right. But 79,970 of them don't care.
Correct.
And I think being realistic about that is often difficult.
Sure.
And I think sometimes, having worked in the newspaper industry, sometimes the numbers that you are told about one-to-many advertising don't align with the reality.
What?
I know.
False
Well, and
advertising?
you see this. I mean, how many people have you heard? I certainly have done it. You go to Facebook and do a Facebook ad, and Facebook ads can be very successful. But mostly they're successful when you know exactly the message you have to get in front of people. If you're just fishing for a message, you're going to throw some money away on Facebook, on Google Ads, a whole bunch of other places. So to me, my tip would be, my one thing I guess in a tip is know the message that resonates with your audience, because that's going to improve your chances no matter which method you use.
Sure. Unless you're trying, the other thing you could do is be doing research and
Right.
trying to see what is the message that fits. And so I'm putting that out to everyone to see, okay, now I see some people resonate to one message and others resonate to another.
But you have to make sure that you're using the right metrics so that you're not sending it to, all your existing customers get one message and they love it because they know you, and the non-customers get a different message and they don't react. And it's like, it's apples and oranges. And I've dealt with that with people where they're like, or there's no evaluation after they do a thing. Oh, okay. So you sponsored the Little League softball team. Did that lead to anything? What do you mean? I mean, did a parent say, "Hey, by the way, I'm looking for a divorce lawyer. I'd like to talk to you." And the first thing really, and maybe this is the best tip of all, hey, ask people how they heard about you.
Sure.
That is one of the most powerful tools when you're doing any kind of marketing, is knowing what people heard. Did they see the billboard? Did someone refer them? Did the same person refer 5 people to you? Because then you can go to that person, take them to lunch and say, hey, by the way, you are rocking it.
Well, and it's interesting, I think you talked about marketing, and I think sometimes we forget that really follow-up is a big piece of marketing.
Yeah.
And that marketing is a way to follow up with people who you believe would have an interest in your, so I think that we have been more having conversations about someone has expressed an interest or we have connected with someone, and how do we now follow up? This is just another, this idea of marketing as follow-up is another way that you can follow up with potential customers, potential clients. And so I think that, follow-up and marketing sort of fall into the same family broadly, and they have different purposes, outcomes, and things that we can measure from them.
Nice. Boy, we covered a lot of ground today.
We did. It was great. All right, everyone. If you have one thing that you'd like to share, your antidote for today, please feel free to share it in the comments. You could also share it inside of our Ring of Renegades Facebook group. And for those listening on podcast, if you are not yet a member of our growing community, please go to Facebook, search for Ring of Renegades, and then ask to join. It is a private group because we're trying to create a community of people who are here to have conversations like this, to have discussions, to look and seek for solutions to some of the challenges that they are facing so that they can take their next step along their own unique pathway to success. And if you liked this episode of the podcast and you're listening to it as a podcast, please feel free to follow us if you are on Spotify. I forget what you do if you're on Apple iTunes.
Subscribe.
Subscribe on Apple iTunes so that you can make sure that you will get notified when our next edition shows up. And in case you are wondering, our next edition will be tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time on Facebook Live. And shortly thereafter, it will be up and available on our podcast. So with that, I hope that
I find it on Facebook Live, Tom?
You can find it in our Facebook group, the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. I told them all about that already.
I'm sorry, did you say private?
I did. What were you doing?
I'm in my office and my Alexa started to play music and I was fumbling to figure out why and how to turn it off. So I totally was like, oh my God, they're hearing my Alexa.
We didn't hear that. Although a good follow-up by Alexa to be paying that much attention that that Alexa chose to make sure that everything was okay with you. Good follow-up. That was 1-to-1 though. So anyhow, thanks so much everybody for listening. We hope that you have a great day and we will see you soon. Here's some further information for those of you who aren't aware about our Ring of Renegades Facebook group. You might want to check it out. Have a great day.
Carving your own path is tough. You want and need a community to offer you insights and advice, share inspiration, provide support, and save you time and money. But where do you find all that? Here's the easy answer: the Ring of Renegades Facebook group, where leaders, entrepreneurs, and business owners identify their next steps. Here's some of what you will find at the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. Just go to ringofrenegades.com and join today. Find and accomplish those next steps.